Chapter 294. The Footprint of the God of the Land, 8. Having bid farewell to Balzac, Eugene and his companions embarked on a diligent journey of preparation for what would come next. The subjugation of Raizakia, however, would unfold not within this world but in the ethereal void that lay between dimensions. Eugene had long observed the scant concentration of mana permeating this peculiar space. Wizards faced heightened limitations and constraints within its confinements, unlike those they encountered elsewhere. Compounding the challenge was Eugene's adversary, a formidable dragon and a true master of arcane arts. Yet this was no ordinary dragon. It was the black dragon Raizakia, known to be the most powerful of the dragons. Raizakia's very existence could be considered the bane of wizards. Moreover, the environment that entrapped him imposed additional burdens upon spellcasters, further constraining their abilities and limiting their powers. But that was not the end of their challenges. There existed a significant likelihood of disrupted communication with the spirit kings within the interdimensional void. Likewise, the summoning abilities of Lovelian, who drew upon creatures from alternate dimensions, faced the risk of failure. In other words, Eugene could not hope to rely on receiving help from others. Lovelian and Melkith were deeply disappointed and saddened by the fact. Lovelian's unwavering determination to rescue the wise Sienna, who could be considered his great mentor, was an endeavor he deemed worthy of sacrificing his very life for. Similarly, Melkith harbored a deep desire to lend her aid in the quest to save Lady Sienna. After all, Sienna was an object of admiration and reverence among all wizards. However, there was a good chance they would die a dog's death. So faced with this daunting prospect, Eugene made a fateful decision. Rather than seeking the assistance of his companions, he resolved to confront Raizakia alone. "And do you stand a chance?" asked Melkith. After parting ways with Balzac, the group moved closer to the World Tree rather than heading to the Coachella tribe's capital. Through the discerning abilities of Akasha and Rhaenyra, they had detected a door in proximity to the World Tree, an entrance that connected to none other than Raizakia himself. "It's not like I don't," Eugene responded. It wasn't as if Raizakia would be in perfect condition either. The black dragon had been trapped in the space between dimensions for 300 years. Dragons possessed the remarkable ability to endure without the need for sustenance, neither food nor drink. However, the sparse concentration of mana in the interdimensional gap would have been woefully insufficient to sustain Raizakia in any semblance of comfort. Thus, the formidable dragon had no alternative but to rely on his own reserves of mana to survive. There were many things to worry about. First, how much of the mana stored in his dragon heart had Raizakia consumed? Moreover, Eugene couldn't forget that Raizakia was no ordinary dragon. He was a special existence, the demonic dragon. Raizakia stood as an unprecedented figure among fallen dragons, a singular existence unlike any that came before. Unlike black wizards who forged contracts with the Demon King, Raizakia had not chosen that path. Instead, he willingly embraced the corrupting influence of Helmuth's dark power, allowing himself to be tainted by its malevolence. There were many uncertainties regarding Raizakia. However, Eugene was clearly aware of the disadvantages he possessed in the battle against the Black Dragon. First of all, he could not use prominence in the upcoming battle. Prominence amplified Eugene's power by taking control of mana and the primal spirits in the surroundings, so it would be difficult to fully utilize the ability to the fullest in a place devoid of primal spirits and sparse in mana. I think I might be able to provide some assistance in regard to that matter," Lovelian said. Eugene had received help from both Lovelian and Melkith in creating prominence, so they were well aware of the disadvantages Eugene faced. "White Tower Master and I can lend you our mana, which you can store in If we can give you as much mana as possible, you will be able to make use of prominence in the dimensional rift," continued Lovelian. "Will that be fine?" asked Eugene. "It doesn't matter to me. Even if I am unable to use magic for a while, I want to be of strength to you and Lady Sienna," responded Lovelian. Mana would naturally regenerate over time, but it was still fatal for wizards to run completely empty. "Why me as well?" asked Melkith. "Even if you run out of mana, you can get help from the Spirit Kings anyways," answered Lovelian. "That's true, but now that you brought up the idea, it would be a little unseemly if I said no, right?" asked Melkith. "Know that it's already unseemly for you to ask that question," Lovelian countered. Naturally, Melkith felt no shame at all. Without any compelling reason to decline Lovelian's proposition, Eugene welcomed his offer with open arms. Thus, Lovelian and Melkith spared no effort, tirelessly gathering every minuscule trace of mana they could find along their journey toward the World Tree and meticulously storing it within the vessel of Akasha. Although Akasha already had a huge reservoir of mana, it was unavailable to Eugene to use freely. This was because the mana held within the dragon heart was allocated for the manifestation of Akasha's diverse powers, as well as for the actualization of Eugene's magic. It would be suicide for me to engage Raizakia in a battle of magic. He would not use magic except prominence. In the upcoming battle against Raizakia, Eugene would need to fight thoroughly as a warrior. He could not help but wonder if he could do it. He didn't want to think about it, but the questions kept appearing in his mind the closer he got to the World Tree. Was it possible for him with who he was now? He was definitely stronger than he was in his previous life. Indeed, such a conviction had long settled in. But was that enough? This he could not answer. The three Dukes of Helmuth, the Blade of Incarceration, the Queen of the Night Demons, and the Demon Dragon, all three had been opponents he could not defeat alone in his previous life. Instead, they had been opponents he could only kill with all five of the hero party present. But he had no one to help him this time around. Molan was occupied defending the north against the Nur, and Eugene didn't know if Vermouth was alive or dead or why he had asked Molan of such a thing. Eugene silently analyzed the situation and the lack of help from his former comrades. Unfortunately, Christina could not join him on this perilous expedition. The uncharted expanse between dimensions held inherent risks, and there was a distinct possibility that Anise, as a soul form, might vanish during their arduous journey. Both Christina and Anise were acutely aware of these perils. Thus, every day the two of them fervently offered their prayers for Eugene's well-being. They would sit together, cradling Altair, the holy sword, upon their laps, channeling their heartfelt devotion into imbuing it with as many miraculous blessings as their combined abilities could muster. "Oh, holy light!" The two of them called God over and over again. They prayed that Eugene would achieve his will, that he would succeed in eliminating the corrupted black dragon, and that he would not die or suffer any irreparable wounds. They prayed that he would return to them with a bright smile. Haha, Eugene laughed while looking at the bonfire. To have so many people worrying about him was... No, apart from that, his gaze drifted towards his fingers lying on his knee. Despite his best efforts to remain calm, an involuntary quiver coursed through them, betraying the underlying tension that gripped his very being. Had he ever been this nervous after being reborn as Eugene? Apart from the instance when he was suddenly confronted by the Demon King of Incarceration, had he ever felt this anxious and afraid before a fight with an enemy? If I had more time to prepare. His white flame formula was still at the 6th star. He still had room to improve. Alternatively, he contemplated embarking on a quest to search the realms of Helmuth for additional fragments of the Moonlight Sword. He also entertained the possibility that the Lionheart family, with their vast resources and influence, could potentially uncover more fragments imbued with the sword's power. But whatever the case, he needed more time. But did he have time to spare? He didn't know. Could he even search for the fragments of the Moonlight Sword with money and influence? No, it would be impossible. Older demons knew about the Moonlight Sword. In particular, Gavid Lindman and Noir Giabella knew how troublesome the Moonlight Sword was. Noir knew that Eugene was in possession of the Moonlight Sword. On the other hand, Gavid remained oblivious to this crucial detail. The ramifications of Gavid discovering that fragments of the Moonlight Sword were being sought and that the sword itself resided within another's grasp were uncertain and unpredictable. It was a delicate matter, and the reaction Gavid would exhibit upon learning this truth remained an enigma. In addition, what about the Demon King of Incarceration? How long would the mysterious Demon King wait for Eugene? How long would he be willing to wait for Eugene at Babel as he had proclaimed? Raizakia is a problem as well. He's not completely incapacitated. He's bidding for his time while protecting himself in the gap between dimensions, waiting for a chance to escape. Eugene turned to the side. He could see Rhaenyra curled up under the covers. Her nightmares were worsening as they got closer to the World Tree. Despite her efforts to conceal it, a noticeable change came over Rhaenyra. Gradually, she ceased partaking in meals and suppressing the sounds of her distressing nightmares that haunted her every night. Christina, ever caring, did her utmost to assist Rhaenyra in finding solace, using her divine magic to bring respite to her troubled sleep and holding her in a comforting embrace. However, in those moments when Christina was immersed in her prayers, there was no one to provide a soothing embrace. Rhysakia's evil influence is becoming stronger and it's affecting her. It made Eugene nervous to know that Rhysakia was capable of such interference. What if Rhysakia escaped while Eugene was building up his confidence to kill the Black Dragon? Sienna had been able to survive for centuries because of the World Tree's miracle and the absence of Rhysakia, the source of her curse from this world. Could the World Tree's miracle continue to protect Sienna even when Rhysakia escaped from his prison and returned to this world? There's no way that Lizard will leave Sienna untouched. Rhysakia was an arrogant creature, and he would not leave Sienna untouched after she had banished him for hundreds of years. Eugene stared at the bonfire for a moment before rising. Whenever he wanted to clear his mind from the plaguing thoughts, moving his body was better than sleeping it off. "Are you going somewhere?" Cyan inquired, his gaze lifting to meet Eugene's face. His voice trailed off as he beheld Eugene's countenance, frozen in an uncharacteristic rigidity, while his damp hair clung to his forehead, moistened by perspiration. Cyan couldn't help but feel a surge of concern. His breath momentarily caught in his throat at the sight before him. Eugene was always relaxed in Cyan's memories. It was the first time he had seen Eugene so nervous and agitated. "Are you okay?" Cyan asked. "I just couldn't sleep," Eugene replied, offering a smile to Cyan, though his eyes betrayed a weariness that lingered. He pointed at the back of the campsite. "I'm just going to swing my sword for a bit, so don't worry about it and go to sleep. It's useless to worry about me." But how could such simple words quench Cyan's worry? He stood up to follow Eugene, but Eugene firmly shook his head. "I want to concentrate by myself." Eventually, Cyan settled himself back into his seat, his hand tightly clenched into a fist as he watched his brother's retreating figure. He did not succumb to a sense of helplessness or any similar sentiment. Instead, his heart brimmed solely with a deep concern for Eugene. While Cyan could not completely empathize with the burdens weighing upon Eugene, his worry for his brother remained. For Cyan, dragons were only creatures of legend. Moreover, Rhysakia was not just a simple dragon but a real legend from the time of his forefather, Vermouth. It was an unimaginable feat for Cyan to fight and kill such an existence. But if it's you... Did he really think so? Cyan could no longer see Eugene's figure. He wanted to think that Eugene would be fine as always. Even if Eugene was faced with an unimaginable challenge, Cyan wanted to believe in Eugene. No, rather, he had to believe in Eugene. Eugene did not wander too far from the campsite. He didn't think taking a long walk would help calm his heart. As such, after walking a good distance, Eugene drew his sword. It was a simple, ordinary sword. It wasn't the sword he would wield against Rhysakia in the upcoming battle. He would likely rely on the Holy Sword and the Moonlight Sword in the battle. Ultimately, it fell upon Eugene to grasp the sword firmly in his hand. In contrast to his previous existence, where his arsenal had been meager, he now possessed a multitude of exceptional weapons at his disposal. However, an undercurrent of concern tugged at his thoughts, cautioning him against complacency. "I'm having all sorts of thoughts," Eugene snorted before beginning to swing his sword. Naturally, he berated himself for entertaining such a foolish notion. It was true that the weapons he now wielded surpassed anything he had possessed in his previous life, surpassing them in every aspect. However, contrary to his baseless worry, his own skills had not dulled but instead grown sharper and more refined. The journey of honing his abilities had been a relentless pursuit of perfection, aligning his mastery with the exquisite weapons bestowed upon him. He tried his best to gain confidence. It was so that he could win in every situation. It was because his enemies were too strong. That's why he desperately honed himself. He continued to train, learn magic, and create new skills. He tried his best. He never wasted even a second after his reincarnation, and each moment had been a crucial part of allowing him to become who he was now. "I can kill him." Eugene concentrated, his entire being attuned to the sensations coursing through his body. Devoid of mana, he embraced the sword in his grip, intimately feeling its weight and texture as though it were an extension of his arm. This heightened awareness granted him the ability to engage in battle without succumbing to the sway of any circumstance. "I can save her." Thoughts of Sienna, the hapless and naive girl, occupied Eugene's mind. Her delicate form bore a profound wound, a sizable cavity in her chest, her very existence sustained solely by the miraculous powers of the World Tree. Each passing moment intensified the trepidation surrounding her fragile state, leaving uncertainty hanging over her future, her life poised on a precipice, with the looming threat of imminent demise. He wanted to save Sienna. In the end, this was why he was pushing ahead with Raizakia's subjugation. He wanted to see her, to save her as quickly as possible. He would not be able to accept it if something happened, and he could no longer save her if she died. He had raged and rampaged at the fount of light for a niece. It was for Christina, who was created just like a niece, a being made into a plaything of fate. Eugene saved the two of them. He destroyed the fount of light and saved Anice's soul. He destroyed the chains of fate that imprisoned Christina and gave her liberty. Eugene had picked a fight with Molan at Lahanjar because he could not leave Molan alone, who was going crazy after hundreds of exhausting battles. Eugene had failed to come up with an ordinary solution to Molan's situation. Regardless of what Eugene did, Molan had to continue to fight against the Nur at Lahanjar as he had done so far. But even if he failed to come up with an answer, he did not leave Molan alone. Eugene had attempted to bring Molan back to his senses by beating him up, although it ended up with his own beating. It was the same now. He was pushing ahead because he wanted to save Sienna and could not leave her alone. It was because he had shared conversations with Sienna and also because he knew her situation. The stupid girl had cried her eyes out in front of him. He had made a promise to save her while acting bravely like an idiot. "Let's not act unseemly," Eugene whispered under his breath after suddenly stopping his sword mid-swing. "It would be ridiculous if I saved her too late after saying such things." His words were directed at himself, knowing full well that he was nervous and anxious. "This is nothing new. I've always picked a fight with bastards that were impossible to beat." Such situations had been commonplace in Eugene's previous life, so why did unease grip him now? He chuckled softly, self-deprecatingly, as he brushed away the beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The act of swinging his sword had brought him a peculiar sense of solace, a peculiar comfort that he welcomed wholeheartedly. While cold perspiration had caused him to tremble in the presence of the crackling bonfire, the heat that now coursed through his veins matched the intensity of his racing heart. Suddenly, Mare's voice broke the silence as she poked her head from beneath Eugene's cloak. She had deliberated on finding words of comfort to assuage his fears and anxieties but ultimately chose to remain silent, allowing him the space to find his own footing. As she expected, Eugene ended up regaining composure on his own. Mare believed that this was the time to speak out to help Eugene cheer up. "You will kill Raizakia and save Lady Sienna, Sir Eugene. Afterward you'll return healthy and we'll go play while holding hands. You, me and Lady Sienna." "Where would we go?" asked Eugene. "We'll be able to go anywhere. The most important thing is this. You will hold my right hand and Lady Sienna will hold my left hand." After saying so, Mare closed her lips for a moment. Then she tilted her head with serious contemplation. "Or you can just hold hands with Lady Sienna, Sir Eugene." "Why would I hold her hand?" said Eugene. "Are you not going to? You can always hold my hand every day and even now, but Lady Sienna's hand won't be as easy to hold as mine," retorted Mare. "Not easy to hold? That's... Are you saying that you can hold Lady Sienna's hand whenever you want to, Sir Eugene?" shouted Mare, not missing a single word Eugene whispered. She jumped up and down with a bright smile. "Well, of course. After all, you and Lady Sienna did that together." "What? You did that. You were the one who said it, Sir Eugene." Mare said. "When did I ever say that?" Eugene roared. "You must have forgotten, but I can read your surface thoughts. I already know that whenever you think of Lady Sienna, you always think about your memory of doing that with her," continued Mare teasingly. Eugene's face glowed bright red. Mare's mischievous nature tempted her to further tease Eugene, but her past encounters had taught her the consequences of pushing her luck too far. A noogie was a fate she wished to avoid. Hastily, she retreated back into the sanctuary of his cloak, well aware of the seething frustration that simmered within him. Eugene quenched his anger. He heard a cough from behind a tree. Someone's head poked out from behind it. "This lady was going to help you because you looked scared, but did you get better?" It was Rhaimira. Emerging from behind the tree, Rhaimira presented herself with an air of resilience, despite the telltale signs of reddened eyes. She stood tall, her chest held high. "Why did you come here without sleeping?" "What about Christina?" asked Eugene. "Mother. The holy woman is deep in prayer. Though this lady would prefer she hugs me instead," Rhaenyra muttered. "You never fail to utter unnecessary words that earn you a smack," Eugene retorted, a hint of exasperation tinging his voice. "Heek." Rhaenyra quickly recoiled. This lady is glad you are feeling better. But if you are really scared, is there a reason to go fight the Black Dragon? Are you going to keep spouting nonsense?" Eugene asked. This lady is only saying this because I am worried about you. And, well, this lady might not be quite ready to meet the Black Dragon." Rhaenyra stole glances at Eugene while hesitating. She wasn't lying when she said that she had been worried about Eugene. Although the scoundrel had a trashy personality, he had been quite good to Rhaenyra during their journey. He had allowed her inside his cloak so she wouldn't get hurt, and he sometimes held her hand inside the cloak when she was trembling too much. "This lady does not want the Black Dragon to kill you." "I don't know who's worrying about who." "I'm going to kill your father," said Eugene. This lady believes that the Black Dragon will not die at your hands. Evil human, I know you are strong enough to be the strongest among humans, but there is no way you are powerful enough to reach the Black Dragon, the strongest of dragons, retorted Rhaenyra. "Ah, that's good for you. If I die, your father will take excellent care of you," Eugene said. "Well, as I just said, this lady is not quite ready for the reunion." Rhaenyra's shoulders slumped once more, weighed down by the burden of her fear. The looming presence of the Black Dragon had intensified her nightmares, tormenting her with increasing intensity as their journey brought them closer to the Black Dragon. Restlessness plagued her heart and mind, exacerbating the unease that gripped her being. Rhaenyra questioned her fear. Why was she so afraid of getting closer to her father, the Black Dragon? "So, this lady thinks it might be better for us to return now." "Well, I am worried about you, Anne." "Stop with the nonsense and go to sleep," Eugene cut in. "This lady is being considerate of you." "No, it's because you're scared." Why would this lady be scared? "There is no reason for me to be afraid of the Black Dragon. If I had to pick something I am scared of. This lady is scared that the Black Dragon might swallow you whole." A haunting nightmare resurfaced within Rhaenyra's consciousness, vividly recalling the sensation of being swallowed whole. The harrowing memory sent shivers down her spine, causing her to instinctively curl into a tighter, protective ball, seeking solace from the tremors that coursed through her body. If the Black Dragon tries to swallow you whole, this lady will muster up my courage and, request the Black Dragon not to swallow you." "You're saying something weird again." "Keep listening." "So, I will plead directly with the Black Dragon so that he will spare you, the human who is trying to kill him. And if possible, I will let you keep your life as this lady's servant." Normally, he would have welcomed her nonsense with a knock on the red jewel on her forehead. However, Eugene allowed her to continue and listened silently when he saw how her voice quivered and her eyes reddened. "And, if this lady is swallowed by something, then I will take you out of this something's jaws," Eugene said with a snort. "Although I don't know what the hell this something might be. This lady does not know either." "And what if you get chewed up and die?" asked Eugene. "Don't say something so horrible," Rhaenyra cried. "In any case, this is a promise between you and me." "Understand?" asked Rhaenyra. Fine, Eugene grunted. Eugene's response, though brief, held a soothing power that gradually calmed the tremors within Rhaenyra. With a relieved sigh, she lifted her head, meeting Mare's gaze, who beckoned to her from the shelter of Eugene's cloak. This lady has no other choice if you call me like that." Rhaenyra hopped towards Eugene, then squeezed into his cloak. "Ack." As soon as she entered, Rhaenyra screamed. "You arrogant little brat. Who are you to tell Sir Eugene not to go?" "Ack. It hurts. It hurts." Mare's retribution caused the cloak to wobble. Chapter 295. Rhysakia 1. Bonus image. There was no need to head all the way into the territory of the elves, where the World Tree was located. It was because they could open the door from the vicinity of the World Tree. Considering the distance we've traveled, shouldn't we pay our respects and visit the World Tree and Lady Sienna? Melkith voiced her disappointment at not being able to witness the majestic World Tree and explore the elves' realm firsthand. However, Eugene's response was resolute as he firmly shook his head. She's in no condition to meet anyone. Lady Sienna would not want to either, Eugene said. In addition, it would be difficult for him to explain the hole in her chest. His greatest concern, deep down, lay in the possibility of his tears streaming uncontrollably upon seeing Sienna. Despite possessing a physically appealing and robust reincarnated body, he was burdened by an unusual disorder. At times, tears would well up in his eyes without any volition on his part. That's not a disorder. I think you're just a sentimental person, Sir Eugene. You have a lot of tears, Mare piped in with her opinion. Don't say something so ridiculous. I have a lot of tears. I could probably count the number of times I cried in my previous life with my hands. Are you sure you could count it with your hands? At the minimum, wouldn't you need all your fingers and toes to count how many times you cried? What would you know? How strange. I'm pretty sure I've said this last time as well. I know a great deal about you, Sir Eugene. I know you act fierce and obnoxious on the surface, but you are surprisingly gentle and kind on the inside, Sir Eugene. Shut up. Eugene verbalized his thoughts accidentally. Melkith had been on the verge of proposing another visit to the World Tree, but her words were abruptly stifled, and her mouth hung open in astonishment as she fixated her gaze upon Eugene. Hey Eugene. I'm still your senior and quite a bit older than you, so isn't it a bit too much to tell me to shut up? I wasn't speaking to you, Lady Melkith, Eugene responded, but Melkith did not seem convinced. She leaned closer to Eugene with an expression of being wronged. Is that really so? Little bro, have you never told this older sis to shut up? At least you must have imagined it though, right? I entertained the thought many times and right now, my imagination is about to become a reality, answered Eugene. I knew it. And since my little bros basically told me to shut up, I can be depressed, right? And I think it might be best to go and see the World Tree to help relieve this older sis of her depression, Melkith muttered. Stop talking nonsense. If you keep doing that, I won't take you along next time, said Eugene, giving her a side glance, causing Melkith's jaw to drop in shock. Melkith grabbed Eugene by the shoulders and jumped up and down with excitement. Little bro, you're saying you will definitely take me to the World Tree next time, right? Ah, yes. Well, I guess you did help me this time around and... Right. That's a given. You can't possibly think of enjoying free help from Melkith El-Haya, the darling of the world and a spirit magic genius with contracts with 3 spirit kings. Pleasure without responsibility doesn't make sense, right? Melkith exclaimed. But if you think about it, didn't you get to sign a contract with Ifrit because of me? I gave you the fire spirit stone, and you would have never gotten the chance to come here if it weren't for me, Eugene retorted. That's true, but I still helped you out and... I used a lot of mana so you could do well, whined Melkith. Fine. I understand. I'll take you next time, so stop acting so silly, responded Eugene. When did I ever act silly? Melkith took a step back, a mischievous grin adorning her face. Eugene acknowledged that she wasn't a bad person yet. He couldn't help but express his disapproval with an exasperated click of his tongue as he fixated his gaze upon her. In truth, Eugene had contemplated presenting Melkith with a leaf from the World Tree once their mission concluded. He deemed it rather troublesome to return all the way to Samar solely for the purpose of allowing her to witness the magnificence of the revered World Tree. She'll be able to enter the territory of the elves with that. Even now, the leaves of the World Tree quivered within the confines of his pockets, indicating their proximity to the elven territory. But the leaves weren't the only things trembling. Nestled within Eugene's cloak, tightly ensconced within Mare's protective embrace, Rhaenyra quivered incessantly. Sir Eugene. Lovelian approached Eugene with a weary sigh, signaling the completion of the last-minute preparations. With utmost care he presented Akasha, cradling it with both hands before speaking further. I've done everything I can. In the preceding days both Lovelian and Melkith had expended their mana, channeling it into Akasha. However, their contributions extended beyond a mere infusion of mana. They had meticulously purified it, ensuring its readiness for immediate utilization by Eugene. Eugene humbly lowered his head as he accepted Akasha. The moment Akasha nestled within his grasp, Eugene could discern its presence keenly. A tremendous reservoir of mana resided within the artifact, emanating an overwhelming magnitude and potency that lent it a palpable weight in his hands. Such a phenomenon was only to be expected given the circumstances. Two eminent figures, the heads of Aratha's magic towers and accomplished archwizards boasting mastery over 8 circles of magic, had channeled their mana into Akasha until their reserves were nearly depleted. Their collective efforts had infused the artifact with an abundance of raw power. "Thank you," Eugene said as he raised his head. Christina approached him. Her face was a little thin, evidence of hardly sleeping over the last few days. "Are you okay?" Eugene asked. She tottered helplessly, and Eugene supported her with a worried expression. "How could that be the saint? She's more like a sly fox in disguise," Melkith couldn't help but think as she stole glances at Christina. She was kept from speaking out because of the heavy, deadly flail hanging from Christina's waist and thigh. "Yes, I'm okay," answered Christina. In fact, she wasn't acting. It was true that she had gotten barely any sleep over the last few days, and she was weak and dizzy from using so much divine power in the battle. Christina barely managed a smile as she handed Eugene the holy sword. "I've stored as much power as possible," she conveyed. Remarkably, the holy sword emitted a gentle radiance, effortlessly illuminating their surroundings without Eugene needing to exert any effort. As Eugene took hold of the holy sword, Christina cautiously positioned her hands behind her neck, deftly unfastening the knot of the rosary that adorned her. "And this contains our wishes and prayers. I dare ask, may I place it on Sir Eugene's neck?" "Yes," Eugene acknowledged with a nod, slightly lowering his posture to facilitate Christina's reach. Glancing down at Eugene's head, Christina experienced a fleeting, inexplicable urge. It was a clandestine impulse to run her fingers through his lustrous gray hair, a longing to gently caress his head. "What are you doing?" Eugene asked. Christina believed she had managed to suppress her impulses, yet reality challenged her self-control. With audacity, Anis seized the initiative, guiding Christina's hand and tenderly stroking the crown of Eugene's head. "May the care of the light be with you." Christina dealt with the unexpected situation without a change in her expression. She must be offering a prayer on my behalf," Eugene surmised. He reverently shut his eyes without uttering a single inquiry, allowing himself to receive Christina's prayer in profound silence. In that instant, an air of solemnity and sanctity enveloped them, permeating the atmosphere with an ethereal presence. With a serious expression, Christina leaned forward to hang the rosary around Eugene's neck. "Christina, I have to be the one to do this," Anis suddenly interjected. "What? Why is that the case?" asked Christina. "Because this rosary was a birthday gift from Hamel and he hung it around my neck. So it's only natural that I should use my own hands to hang it around Hamel's neck." "I cannot accept that, sister. If Sir Eugene hung the rosary around your neck, that means you've already experienced the pleasure, right? So you must concede this to me. Hamel is going to rescue Sienna, an old colleague and friend of mine. It's a blessing to be given on his way to save her, so I cannot give this up." In that brief instant when Christina stooped down, the collision of disparate viewpoints occurred between the two of them. "Then let's do this. Christina, I will put the rosary around Hamel's neck now, so when he returns it, you can receive it from him. You can enjoy that moment." "My goodness. Sister, are you a genius?" The two came to a quick compromise and Christina calmly retreated, imagining the moment when she would receive the necklace from Eugene. "Don't be surprised by every little thing, Christina. I'll show you now what it really means to be a genius." Seizing complete dominion over the physical vessel, Anis concealed a malicious smirk as she leisurely stretched her waist. With calculated intent, she subtly lowered her knee and brazenly leaned forward, causing her ample bosom to press against Eugene's head. Detail is the key. "By God!" Christina screamed. How shameless. How could you think of such a thing? Remember, Christina, Sienna can't do anything like this, but we can. This will be our powerful weapon." Anis hung the rosary around Eugene's neck, feeling proud of her sly, ingenious idea. Eugene didn't want to imagine the identity of the soft, fluffy and heavy objects weighing down on his head, and he deliberately allowed his awareness to fade by half. Mare's piercing cries echoed within his mind, yet he found a peculiar sense of gratitude towards them at that moment. "It is done." The weight slowly lifted and Eugene looked up in surprise. He saw a familiar smile. Anise looked down at Eugene and moved her lips. Hamel. Please take care of Sienna. Constrained by the presence of others, she refrained from speaking aloud and instead silently mouthed the words. Nonetheless, Eugene comprehended the unspoken message and responded with a nod of understanding. Of course. Eugene had received Akasha, the holy sword, and the rosary. He rose and took a deep breath. Here I go, he said. Right. In the eyes of those who weren't privy to the details, Christina's behavior had been extremely sudden and unconventional, especially considering that she was the saint. Even Melkith, who boasted unparalleled expertise in such matters, couldn't conceal her astonishment as her mouth fell open in surprise. Sion was particularly surprised as well. What had he just seen? After a moment he closed his mouth, cleared his throat, then approached Eugene. Be careful, he warned. Unlike the others, Sion could not assist Eugene by storing his powers in a vessel. Instead he took out Geddon's shield and handed it to Eugene. The shield was what Eugene had needed the most. Of course I'll be careful. Don't get into trouble while you wait here. You know, protect your elders, responded Eugene. Even if they're exhausted, I don't think there will be any need for me to protect the Tower Masters, answered Sion. You should still have your blade at the ready. What else would you be doing among tired people? Eugene said, mounting Geddon's shield on his left arm. Afterward he placed his hand into his cloak and tapped on the back of Rhaenyra's hand. Heek. Rhaenyra squealed while instinctively grabbing Eugene's hand. She was trembling incessantly with fear. Eugene gave a deep sigh and dragged Rhaenyra out of the cloak. No. I don't want to go. This lady is not fully prepared yet. Oh, why don't we go tomorrow instead of today? She begged. Tomorrow? After we came all the way here? The mood is already set on us leaving, so stay calm, said Eugene. No. This lady is not. Sniff. What's the matter with the ambience? If this lady were to grace you lowly peasants with a dance, can we postpone it until tomorrow? Rhaenyra whimpered, her voice tinged with reluctance. She contorted her shoulders and even swayed her hips, attempting to demonstrate her resistance. However, her awkward movements fell far short of being classified as a dance. Eugene stared at Rhaenyra with a horrified expression, then shook his head. Stop. And you just need to come out for a moment. After we enter, you can hide inside the cloak. But, as his daughter, how could I not give my greetings to the Black Dragon? Whimpered Rhaenyra. What kind of a daughter makes a fuss like this because she's scared of her dad? Don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. I made a promise, remember? Said Eugene. Really? Are you sure it's going to be okay? Rhaenyra looked up at Eugene with tears in her eyes. Eugene stared at the red jewel on her forehead before nodding. That's right. Eugene's words appeared to resonate with Rhaenyra as she inhaled deeply and retreated a few steps. Eugene slowly extended Akasha towards the hatchling. It was the draconic spell that he had performed several times. Rhaenyra closed her eyes while taking a breath, and Akasha emitted a red light. Woof. Akasha's draconic spell intertwined with Rhaenyra, forging a profound connection. Utilizing the hatchling as a catalyst, the spell harnessed its energy to unveil the gateway to the interdimensional realm where Rhysakia awaited. As the space surrounding them warped and twisted, Eugene cautiously advanced towards Rhaenyra, firmly grasping her shoulders. In an instant, they were enveloped by the engulfing grip of the distorted realm, disappearing from sight. Her head pulsed with a disorienting ache and a wave of dizziness washed over her. She struggled to discern whether she stood firmly on her own 2 feet or if she was sprawled on the ground, her senses tangled in a haze of confusion. The sensation resembled her distant recollection of that initial encounter with alcohol ages ago. In a manner akin to severe intoxication, she found herself unable to regain her faculties. The current state of her being eluded her, slipping through her grasp like an elusive mirage. Heek. She shook his head, attempting to shake off the disorientation. Rhaenyra lay sprawled on the ground. Her legs had faltered beneath her and she clung tightly to Eugene's hand. Eugene slowly caught his breath and raised Rhaenyra off the ground. Come inside, he said. An overwhelming sense of madness seized Rhaenyra as if her sanity teetered on the edge. The red jewel embedded in her forehead throbbed relentlessly as if struck repeatedly by an invisible hammer. Suppressing the rising nausea, Rhaenyra swiftly covered her mouth with her hand, determined to quell the unsettling sensation. Seeking solace, she sought refuge within the confines of the space concealed within Eugene's cloak. Only then did Eugene look around. Darkness was drifting around him. Within this ethereal darkness, myriad shades and densities intermingled, resembling an amalgamation of countless night skies woven together. Simply looking at it threatened to confuse his mind. He had succeeded in entering through the door. Eugene gulped before moving on. Within a few steps, the darkness drifting around him was lifted. Eugene found himself immersed in an encompassing darkness, devoid of solid ground beneath his feet. However, a subtle incline loomed just a short distance ahead, sloping downwards. With vigilance, Eugene directed his gaze downward, refusing to let his guard waver. He saw a big, truly enormous black dragon. It was Rhysakia. Just like when Eugene had first seen him, the black dragon was curled up inside his large tail. The black, sharp-scaled tail covered his face. Is he sleeping? He hoped so. Eugene slowly raised the moonlight sword towards Rhysakia. At that moment, Rhysakia's head suddenly tilted upwards. Chapter 296. Rhysakia, 2. The whole process seemed very slow to Eugene. The tail, adorned with a formidable array of sharp and rugged scales, made the initial descent. Subsequently, the dragon's head emerged, gradually rising upward. With a marked sluggishness, the dragon reclined, fixing its gaze skyward in a deliberate and measured manner. His eyes remained closed, veiled in darkness. Slowly, very slowly, his eyelids began to part. Like a delicate curtain unfurling, the white veil lifted, revealing the eyes beneath that had been inverted but now found their proper alignment. The pupils were vertically slitted, reminiscent of the serpentine gaze of a colossal snake. Those intense, menacing eyes fixated upon Eugene, radiating an aura of primal danger. Yet it was not a mere meeting of gazes. Instead, it felt as if the dragon's vast, all-encompassing eyes were ensnaring Eugene, capturing his very essence within their powerful gaze. It was dragon fear. Mare lost consciousness inside the cloak, and similarly overwhelmed by a profound sense of fear, Rhaenyra's voice erupted in a piercing scream. Eugene yearned to succumb to the same urges, to lose consciousness or release a primal scream, yet he quelled those impulses. He couldn't afford to yield. How could he allow himself to become a blathering fool after merely glimpsing the black dragon? Gritting his teeth, Eugene summoned every ounce of his willpower and activated the white flame formula. Its purpose was to withstand the relentless, intangible pressure that threatened to pulverize his very bones and organs. Eugene had once experienced dragon fear from Reincarnted, the red dragon. However, it could not compare to what he was feeling now. It was a matter of course. Although Reincarnted had been quite mature compared to the child, Rhaenyra, the red dragon, had been 3 centuries old at most. But what about Rhysakia, the black dragon? Rhysakia was an ancient dragon who had lived for more than a millennium. Even prior to his fall, he had been revered as one of the mightiest beings among the dragon kind. Consuming the heart of the dragon lord after betraying his own kind had solidified his fearsome reputation. Moreover, as the last surviving ancient dragon following the demise of his brethren, Rhysakia stood as the oldest, most powerful and most malevolent dragon to ever exist. Throughout his past life, Eugene had encountered Rhysakia on multiple occasions, and each encounter brought him perilously close to the brink of death. He had become intimately acquainted with Rhysakia's devastating dragon fear, having faced it time and again. However, strangely enough, Eugene did not feel a sense of familiarity with the current situation. Rhysakia's dragon fear seemed more intense compared to his previous encounters, surpassing anything he had experienced before. Dragon fear was a malevolent aura of death and destruction emitted by dragons. In the case of Rhysakia, his dragon fear had matched the intensity of his twisted personality 3 centuries ago. However, it became apparent that his madness had expanded exponentially during his entrapment within the interdimensional void. Rhysakia's dragon fear froze Eugene in place, his body stiffening like ice. Despite invoking the power of the white flame formula to resist, his trembling could not be suppressed. Fwish! The rosary adorning his neck emanated a radiant, comforting glow, enveloping Eugene in its warm embrace. The divine power infused within it, a testament to Christina and Anissa's contribution, manifested as a miraculous presence. Though he understood it to be an illusion, it felt as if both Christina and Anise stood steadfastly behind him at that moment. Their ethereal forms seemed to wrap around him, their arms and wings serving as a protective shield, ensuring Eugene's resolve remained unyielding and preventing his collapse. His tremors stopped and the cold, frozen spirit melted in the warm light. After taking a few deep breaths, Eugene took a step forward. Then he stared directly into Raizakia's eyes. Vermouth. A voice resounded in the darkness, although Raizakia didn't speak directly. No. You look like Vermouth, but you are not him. Are you his descendant? It's Hamel, responded Eugene without hiding himself. As if taken back by the answer, Raizakia remained silent for a moment as he stared at Eugene. Kuha. Reincarnation, is it? Someone committed a taboo that even dragons avoid. Who was it? Was it that girl Sienna Meridian? Or was it Vermouth himself? Asked Raizakia. Shut your mouth, said Eugene. If you really are Hamel, then it explains why you've come here and why you are angry at my words. It must be because I turned Sienna Meridian, that cheeky girl, into a walking corpse, jeered Raizakia. Rumbly. The darkness roared. Raizakia slowly unfurled his body from a ball, then spread his wings. I remember everything. I never forget anything. Sienna Meridian, the wench who drove me into this miserable place. Among the pathetic, arrogant humans, I want to chew and swallow that girl foremost. The dragon fear emanating from Raizakia intensified, accompanied by a surge of killing intent. His eyes brimmed with malevolent darkness, seething with a potent mix of malice and madness. Eugene counted himself lucky when he saw those eyes. Nor Giabella, the queen of the night demons, and Gavid Lindman, the blade of incarceration. Neither of them was inferior to Raizakia when it came to their power. Eugene had survived several encounters with the two. Noir had never shown any hostility towards Eugene, and Gavid could not kill Eugene because of his loyalty to the demon king of incarceration. However, Raizakia wasn't bound by such things. There was no reason for the insane dragon to refrain from killing Eugene, no reason for him to suppress his killing intent. There's no comparison, thought Eugene. Jagan, the beast of Ravesta, was one of the strongest among the younger demons. The atmosphere he exuded had been sufficient to make Eugene nervous, but it was nothing compared to Raizakia's dragon fear. Where did you hide my daughter? Raizakia growled, causing Eugene's hair to flutter in the wind. Eugene looked upwards without stepping back. Raizakia was looking down at Eugene with his ragged wings unfurled. I know you've taken my daughter as the key to getting here. That cloak is a space magic artifact. You must have hidden my daughter in there. Rhaenyra stifled a gasp, her hand instinctively covering her mouth within the confines of the cloak. The words of the black dragon echoed in her ears, referring to her as his daughter. It was a title she had envisioned countless times, imagining the immense emotions and overwhelming joy that would accompany such a moment. However, the harsh reality shattered her expectations. The mere utterance of the word daughter from Raizakia intensified her trembling. Though not focused directly on her, the icy, malevolent gaze of the black dragon constricted her breath, leaving her gasping for air. Hamel, I will take back my daughter after killing you, Raizakia declared before opening his jaw. A black tornado of dark power swirled and gathered in front of him. Eugene braced himself for what he knew was imminent. The black dragon was preparing to unleash its devastating breath. However, the sheer density of the dark power coalescing before Raizakia was beyond Eugene's comprehension, leaving him astounded by its immense potency. Did he really get weaker? Eugene doubted his presupposition. Being trapped in the dimensional rift for centuries, Eugene had expected the black dragon's power to have diminished. However, Raizakia displayed no signs of weakening. In fact, his presence exuded a formidable strength that defied Eugene's assumptions. Eugene raised Akasha high into the air. Whoosh! All the mana stored in Akasha poured out, and at the same time, Eugene activated Prominence. Purple flames erupted around him before forming a wing behind him. Prominence greedily devoured all the mana that poured out of Akasha and formed numerous feathers. Haha. Heh. It's nice to see that cursed staff after such a long time. Did Sienna give you Akasha? I've been eyeing it for centuries. Raizakia laughed insidiously. The breath was still growing in size and power. Eugene glared at Raizakia while attempting to measure the power of the black dragon's dark power. "You bastard! What did you do?" Eugene shouted. He was appalled after discovering that Raizakia possessed dark power that did not belong to him. Instead, what he felt coming from Raizakia was Edmund's dark power from the footprint of the god of the land. No, to be exact, it was the dark power he gathered for the ritual by sacrificing thousands of lives. "Ha ha ha." Raizakia burst out laughing. "That arrogant human black wizard. He did not know his place and dared to covet my dark power. A mere human dared to greed after my power. Me, the black dragon Raizakia," he roared. The dark power continued to swell. Eugene activated ignition through prominence, then allowed Akasha to levitate behind him before grabbing the holy sword with his left hand. It was quite an interesting trick, only if it had worked. "Did you think it would be difficult for me to reap the failing, dispersing dark power? Both you and that black wizard took me, Raizakia, way too lightly. Did you really think I had grown weak and frail after being stuck in this place for centuries?" roared Raizakia. The ball of dark power was no longer expanding. Instead, it was causing their surroundings to vibrate as if they were on the verge of exploding. "You will die here, Hamel. I will kill you and eat you. I will take back my daughter from you. Afterward, it won't take me long to escape from this place." Raizakia's voice grew more and more heated. Dragons were known for their longevity and resilience against the ravages of time. It was a trait that kept their minds sharp and their sanity intact, regardless of the years they accumulated. However, Raizakia stood apart from his noble brethren. The black dragon had descended into madness 3 centuries ago. There was truly nothing in the gap between dimensions, nothing except the patches of different darkness. But the darkness contained no mana, dark power, or spirits. One could not even feel the passage of time in this place. The mad dragon had been isolated in this space for 200 years, and since he had nothing, he had turned his mind to his madness. Why had he failed? He had isolated the master of Uk. The human wizard had been on the verge of death. She wouldn't have been a threat even if she had been in perfect condition. There had been no reason for him to fail. The elves were no hindrance. He was going to kill Sienna, kill the elves, take Akasha, and burn down the world tree just because. But he had failed. A miracle. Right, it really had been a miracle. The world tree had protected the elves and Sienna. The human wizard had moved it to her will while on the verge of death. As a result, he had been in this miserable state for hundreds of years. The thought of wanting to die never crossed his mind. The demonic dragon always survived, even when things looked grim. Even on the battlefield where the Demon King of Destruction and the Demon King of Incarceration had massacred half of all dragons, where all the ancient dragons perished, Raizakia survived by betraying the Lord, devouring his heart and corrupting himself. It would be no different this time. He didn't know how many years had passed, but Raizakia had survived. After persisting, he was finally given another chance. "Die!" Raizakia spat with joy, eagerness, and madness. Fush. The orb of dark power exploded, and the black dragon's breath fired toward Eugene. The dragon's spear carbos could unleash the power of a dragon's breath with a single thrust. But Eugene realized just how arrogant he had been in thinking so. He knew he couldn't counter Raizakia's breath even if he possessed a dozen dragon spears. Crack. The light emitting from the holy sword was sheathed with the empty sword. 4 overlapping layers were completed in an instant, and Eugene wielded the sword while feeling the massive weight in his grasp. The power contained in 4 layers of the empty sword was overwhelming enough to decelerate all other forces. However, it failed to show the same influence in the face of Raizakia's breath. The dark power and flames dispersed upon making contact. Eugene saw the holy sword rattling. He clenched his teeth and hurriedly placed his right hand into the cloak. Drawing forth the moonlight sword, Eugene infused his strike with ethereal moonlight, intertwining its radiance with his attack. The combined might of the moonlight sword and the 4 layers of the empty sword proved sufficient to neutralize the oncoming breath. Yet, despite this feat, a trace of unease crept over Eugene's features, draining the color from his face. For before him, he beheld the sight of 10 additional spheres of dark power, exact replicas of the breath, poised ominously in front of Raizakia. The moonlight sword? The demonic dragon recognized the weapon. He flapped his wings while chuckling. How ironic, Hamel. You were the most human out of anyone, unlike Vermouth, who didn't even seem like a human. And you hated demon folks and the demon kings more than any of your companions. Eugene couldn't figure out where Raizakia was getting at. He had more important tasks at hand, calculating how he could kill the black dragon. Even if chances were slim, Eugene could not hesitate. After releasing the holy sword, Eugene clutched his chest with his left hand. Yet you used the sword of a demon king and of destruction no less. Can you really call yourself human while using a power that is not permitted to humans, a power that humans cannot handle? What was he talking about? Overwhelmed by the shocking revelation, Eugene's mind raced with questions, a torrent of confusion and disbelief flooding his thoughts. However, before he could voice his questions, a jolt of indescribable agony tore through his being. His hand instinctively pressed against his chest, desperately seeking solace amidst the chaos within. The ensuing explosion that erupted from deep within him was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Eugene's body convulsed with the immense strain of his unprecedented feat through the convergence of prominence and the ignition of his mana and cores. He had unleashed a power beyond comprehension. Every fiber of his being trembled under the overwhelming force coursing through his veins. His teeth clenched together, threatening to shatter as he fought to contain the explosive energy surging within him. The sheer intensity of the internal turmoil left him incapable of uttering a single word, fearing that the slightest release of his tightly sealed lips would result in his very being fracturing apart. This is truly amazing. The sword of destruction alone surprised me, but your current power has already exceeded the boundaries of man. Raizakia laughed maniacally. The sword of destruction? Was he referring to the Moonlight Sword? Was it the power of the Demon King of Destruction? Eugene struggled to recall Vermouth's exact expression when he first stumbled upon the Moonlight Sword in the enigmatic ruin. Though the memory eluded him, he reasoned it must have been a serene and composed countenance. Had his expression been anything but calm, it would surely have left a lasting imprint in Eugene's recollections. Gray hair, golden eyes, burning flames. Hamel, you've been reincarnated as a descendant of Vermouth. It is his blood that now courses through your veins, granting you the ability to wield the Moonlight Sword. Just as that human who transcended the bounds of humanity possessed such power, so do you with his blood flowing within you, said Raizakia. The blood of Vermouth did not seem to fade even after hundreds of years. Everyone who took on the Lionheart name, with even a single drop of the Lionheart blood flowing in their veins, was born with the characteristic gray hair and golden eyes of Vermouth. And even though hundreds of years had passed, Vermouth's descendants were somewhat capable of handling the equipment of the Demon Kings. Even though Hamel and Molin had failed, Dominic and Doynes had succeeded just because the blood of the Lionhearts flowed in their veins. Amazing. It's truly amazing. The 10 spheres began to tremble as Raizakia exclaimed. Eugene's body stopped trembling. The power that threatened to destroy his body was now calm, and it filled Eugene completely. The flame in Eugene was burning hotter and fiercer than hellfire, and the flame erupted all over Eugene, taking the shape of a lion's mane fluttering furiously. I am greedy for that blood, whispered Raizakia with a smile. All 10 breaths fired in unison, and Eugene shouted with a passion that filled his body. Boom! The simultaneous activation of ignition accelerated Eugene's body, propelling him forward with incredible speed. As he unleashed lightning flash, a trail of blackened ashes marked his path,